Hello, America. This week we are talking about Google/YouTube censorship, global warming, and ecofeminism. I'm Ben.
And I'm Matt, and we are the Free Will Podcast.
So, on this week of the Free Will Podcast, this is a very special week. We have two features, which has never been done before, but we plan on doing a lot more. So, we've got Dom.
Hey.
And we have Noah.
And no MC.
What's up?
Not much,
Okay.
man.
Okay, so what I'm thinking we're going to start off with is let's talk about the Google and YouTube censorships. I don't know how much experience you guys have with this, but personally, on the Free Will Podcast, we've had our account being deactivated. We've had our videos deleted, and right now we have 4 comments on our most recent video, yet only 1 shows up.
Well, why were your videos deleted?
That we don't know because they never gave us an explanation. They just said that our account was deactivated. But with that, we've also had Twitter having many things deleted.
Well, sometimes Twitter
Matt
isn't the
talks
best.
about that because he runs our Twitter.
So with Twitter, it's blocking tweets saying that there's sensitive material and stuff like that. When we're just plugging our episodes, we're saying that, hey, this is our first episode. That was the week that we had the most trouble. Was our first week on air.
Yeah.
And we're just saying this was our first episode. Make sure to tune in and watch. And they were deeming that as sensitive content.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see what's sensitive about. What do you mean sensitive content?
That's the thing that's a problem right now is that they are deeming things as sensitive content, but in reality it isn't. It's just things that may differ politically than what they believe in. Like with our YouTube stuff, we use tags like Republican conservatism and stuff like that, just to help with the feed. But I think that they're using that to deactivate our accounts and to...
Did they take down the thing on YouTube?
Yeah, they did. Our first episode was taken down, and thankfully we got back up. But
because you use conservative and Republican, is that what you use?
GOP. We use.
Well, we use a bunch of tags. We use multiple different tags, but those are just some of them. So some of them we think that there's some trigger words there that could automatically block content.
Yeah.
Well, that seems kind of ridiculous in my opinion. YouTube's gotta give you also a reason, hey, we flag this because of this, and this. Change it. And
they give a reason. They say that it's sensitive content, but in reality, they don't have to give any more explanation than that because they are a private organization.
That seems like that gives them too much power. There's got to be a reason for you taking down something. You can't just do whatever the hell you want.
And that's what we're about to talk about. And for America, Dom, he tends to be more liberal with some of his beliefs. Am I right?
Yeah, you're pretty right about that.
Yeah, and this is something that is, while it's affecting mainly conservatives, this is something that really should be at the forefront of discussion for all of America, because it's only a matter of time when you start invading on the rights of freedom of speech for a certain group of people that other groups are affected.
Well, yeah, it seems to me especially for that does seem to violate something for freedom of speech. If you can't use a certain tag, it's not that offensive to just say what were the tags you used again? I'm sorry, I already forgot.
Just like standard things like Republican, GOP, conservatism.
Yeah, it just seems kind of stupid that they would take that down just because of that. I mean, they gotta just be better at that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I agree because they very much have a history of this, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, where they keep censoring this stuff. They filter out search results. They do it on all their platforms. I think it's a very dangerous combo because of power and bias together. I don't think in its nature it's dangerous, but I think when you have bias combined with power is when it becomes dangerous. And I think that's one of the reasons that I believe strongly in limited government, because if you have a biased government, it has too much power, then it's going to control everything. I think it's the same concept with Google and these private organizations.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Well, I got a question for you guys, because this kind of all seems to I read something about this. Have you guys ever heard of Article 13, anywhere? Any of you guys?
No.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I'm not that much in depth with what it is.
So, I'm not either, but
but
I'm a little, but just to give a basics, it's just kind of, YouTube's gonna come in really hard with censoring certain things. You know how if you use certain YouTube videos will have clips of a TV show or a movie or something like that. Like just short little clips that have always been fine.
Yeah, like
Article 13, the problem is that kind of stuff can be like taken down, or you could get strikes for that, and that could really start to ruin content of certain like actual YouTubers and on the YouTube site.
Yeah, and what I'm really scared of, because YouTube is owned by Google, so it's basically the same thing. But
Yes.
when you have Google censoring a certain party, censoring certain views, like I've heard of things where if you search Lying Ted, that comes up on Google, but if you search Crooked Hillary, nothing comes up. And while I'm not for calling people certain names like these, I believe that is just immoral, unethical, and I think that that's evil, censoring things because of a certain political view. And
Oh, yeah, sure.
and what I'm scared most of is in the upcoming elections when you have new waves of voters who don't really know how to think for themselves and make their own conscious decisions. They're going to be in a situation where they don't know the other side because there is no other side for them to know.
And yeah, I mean, that seems just terrible. You need to have two sides of every argument.
At least two.
That will make you a rational thinking person. You can't just, like for me,
Yeah,
I
you
am
can't just
very
follow a
liberal, but I kind of agree with some Republican ideas. I think about, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Like, just for an example, when I went to vote, I voted for I voted for Baker. He's a Republican. I would have voted for Gonzalez, but I'm thinking to myself, I never heard anything bad about Baker. He seems like he's doing a good job. So while I'm mostly a liberal, I also like to focus on the person itself. So like, just kind of going back to the whole censorship thing, I've made rational decisions based on my own research.
Yeah, and that is what I think is vitally important for Americans, and I think a lot of the division that's happening is because of these party lines that people feel they cannot like cross. They feel like that is something that is a set thing, but at Free Will, we believe heavily in freedom of thought and individualism. Go based on what you believe and what logic and reason tells you. Don't go based on the waves of people on either side.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's something that I take very seriously too, because I like to pride myself in the fact that I would never vote Republican just because somebody has GOP under their tag in the voting booth. You know,
Exactly.
Like I firmly believe in the fact that everybody has to be judged based off merit, and they have to be judged based off their character. And I think it's something you have to weigh out. And I mean, yes, most of the time, the people I tend to support are Republican, but sometimes that can change, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It just all depends on the person that's actually running. You don't want to. It's just sometimes people are just. They're just kind of dirtbags, and you don't want to support someone who's a dirtbag.
Yeah. And Noah, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, definitely. I think you want to see all the facts before you make a decision, right? Like what Dom said, you gotta gather all the facts to make a rational decision. You know, don't just get one side.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I bring this up a lot, but during the Democratic primaries of 2016, that election, I liked Jim Webb. He was running as a Democrat, but I thought he was
a fan of him. I'll be real honest. I was pulling for Bernie. I really was.
And that's fine. It's your own decision, and that's why we have the system we have, is that you vote for who you believe. And it's fine to differ in opinion, and that's what a lot of people don't get, is that it's fine to believe something else.
Well, like exactly what you said. I feel like a lot of like new voters, especially like towards like families, that can like really sway a lot of people's decision. Because sometimes a family will be like all right, all left, and you feel like, man, I don't really want to stick out and like have a huge argument with like my grandfather on something. So I should just I should think how he thinks, and like that. I mean, listen, sometimes I get it, but you gotta just you gotta be your own adult once you get to that age where you can make really important decisions. Like, that's what you don't understand. It's a very, very important to have your own decision and to vote based on what you actually believe in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And what I'm really scared about is with these next elections that they're going to sway. I know that they're going to sway heavily the views of Democratic positions, and they're going to like blanket out any conservative.
I'll see what
They have been doing that.
Yeah.
So
But I'm scared about if nothing is done about this, a real rigged election where there is no hope for a conservative coming for office unless if something is done and unless if people find alternative ways of getting their news.
Yeah, well, I think that was shown on a smaller scale in the midterms just about a month ago. I think that there was a prime example of, I mean, when you're in the Republican community, like when you're in that conservative group and you see a lot of people pulling for conservatives as well as you tend to think that we have a big support group, but in the grand scheme of things, that just didn't show in midterms. And I feel like that we need to do a better job of pulling for our candidates when it comes to elections, but I feel like that it's not giving any results. I feel like you'd think we were still handing out newspapers, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, like, to be fair, I did see a lot when I was watching TV, and even on, like, when I was watching, like, YouTube on my phone. I saw a lot more of, like, the Jim Baker kind of those election ads you get, more than the, his name was Ray Gonzalez, I think. I called him Jay for the longest time, and I don't know why I did. I think his name is Jay, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember for that. I think the reason for that, though, was because Baker was the incumbent. He's already been in office, so he's usually...
That, you know what? That makes a lot of sense the more I think about that.
And Baker is heavily loved by Democrats. Like, while he's a Republican...
He did say he does not support Trump at all as a Republican.
He's a bit of a rhino.
Yeah, he's definitely not someone I would call a conservative. I believe that he's a moderate Republican at best, maybe even a possible moderate Democrat in disguise.
Well, I feel like he's still, because, like, we gotta think about it this way. He does still support a lot of Republicans who do support Trump, but it kind of actually shows a lot to his character that, yeah, he's a Republican, and, like, most Republicans, like, oh, yeah, I love our president because he's also a Republican, but he kind of, like, took a stance, like, no, I don't like him. He just seems like a bad guy.
And if you watch a lot of our free will stuff, while there are some things we support with Trump, there are other things we heavily disagree with, and we call him out on those. Like one thing in particular we covered last week was the bump stock ban.
Yes.
And we chose to, and another one was also on his immigration policies. Call him out on that too.
Well, like, I'll be the first one to say it, as I really just do not like Trump at all. I don't like him as a person. I find his ideas are terrible. I give him props for what he kind of did with North Korea. I just do. That's just, I try to think back on, like, what else I gave him props for. I think that's the only thing that I'm like, okay.
Well, I believe he deserves... I
think the economy is important, too.
Yeah,
I definitely agree with you. I don't like Trump. I may support our president, but I think he's a horrible person. If we're being completely honest. I think that they're terrible. But I think that in terms of policy and politics, I think he's been doing a lot to push the Republican agenda, which I really do like.
Well, what I believe is that if you're judging him based on his character, there's a lot to dislike and there's a lot that you need.
There's a lot to hate
But
about his
I think
character.
that if you're judging him by his actions, I think you would see a little more positivity, like especially in the economy, like with our GDP and with like unemployment for everyone as well as minorities. I think he's doing a great job with that. But again, I think just as much of a danger there is with some of these censorships that are in like Google and YouTube, I think just as big of an issue is the people on the right side that worship Trump and that think of him almost like as a godlike figure.
Well, yeah, that's the problem you have there. You have people who, that kind of goes back, you are not making a very rational decision. My economics teacher says that to be successful in anything, you got to be rational. So if people aren't being like rational and thinking to themselves, then we're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah, you
won't get anywhere if you don't think.
Yeah, you need to give credit where it is earned, and you need to discredit and when it is deserved. Like you can't just go about saying how this person can do no wrong, because at the end of the day, while it is fine to support your government isn't always in the best interest of the people with how it conducts itself. And that's regardless of who you're voting for.
Yeah. And like, if you're going to make rational, kind of going back to the censorship, it's got to change. It's got to stop being, like, I like it because it's kind of Democrat forward, but that's just because that's what I believe in. I just like that more, but just to be a fair, like, person, and, like, you're right, like, you three are gonna start to vote very soon if you haven't already voted. Ben, how old are you?
I'm gonna be voting I'm going to be eligible to vote by March.
Exactly. So, like,
Yeah.
it's important for all of you guys, especially, that you got to make rational decisions. You got to, like, actually do your research. I had to research so much on a lot of the questions because I wasn't actually sure which way I wanted to go.
And that's the biggest problem, because when you choose to research, which is the right thing to do, when you try and research and have all of this stuff that is
so
what they...
when it's so censored, it's a big problem, and I think that really does need to change.
Yeah, you can't make a rational decision with that.
Yes, agreed.
And another thing, so switching to another topic that is kind of related is, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but what Tim Cook said, who's Apple, is genuinely scary to me. That they even leave worse than Google.
I think the issue with it is that a lot of Democrats, not all Democrats, but a lot of Democrats have looked at that and said they don't see what's wrong with it, because all he said was, I don't have the exact quote, but along the lines of generally what he said was that hate speech is not allowed on his platforms at Apple.
It's not welcome. Anything that could be hate speech.
Or anything that can be division, that can cause division, which is the scariest part.
The problem with that is that hate speech is subjective. Like, there's no, because once you get them to be able to do something on a feeling-based thing, and they say they can outlaw hate speech on Apple's platform, then they get to decide what hate speech is. And a lot of the time, it's been shown in the last few years that a lot of them feel that hate speech is just anything right-leaning.
Yeah, and what I believe is that when hate speech is allowed under the First Amendment. You can't threaten with physical violence for someone, but you're allowed and entitled to speak your own opinions as long as it doesn't call for like a physical harm on someone.
Well, again, I kind of get that. This is one of those things where, like, I don't know how I entirely feel about this, because on paper, I like it. In practice, this could be very bad. Because, like, basically all he's saying is he doesn't want, like, hate speech is targeting someone based off one specific thing. He's basically trying to, like, I understand what he really wants to do. He's trying to, like, stop kind of racist comments and kind of stuff like that. At the same time, I don't know how it's going to work, because kind of like you guys said, hate speech is subjective.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So it can get really dicey really quick, and I see the problems with it, but I also see, like, the benefits with it as well.
And as our founding fathers thought, they knew that parties would cause for some amount of division to happen in the country. And when you're talking about banning things for division, that means you are going to be taking away one side of an argument. Because that is, at the end of the day, division is just disagreements that are gone past just disagreeing. And when you take out, we know that it's going to be the right-wing stuff that will be censored, as we have seen in history.
Yes, I agree totally, Ben. And I think an important thing to look at is that I'm a firm believer that if hate speech is allowed on a platform, it will destroy itself. Because nobody who's sensible-minded is going to look at hate speech on a platform and say, hey, I agree with this. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of these CEOs think of Americans, that they'll see some anti-Semitic tweet or some anti-Semitic message and they'll agree with it. They just don't see how everybody has their own free will, and most sensible people aren't going to support something.
Can you blame some of them? Some of these people aren't the smartest in the world.
I know a lot of them aren't the smartest, but most sensible people aren't going to look at a tweet that's very, very hateful, like a legitimate hate speech tweet that's something racist or homophobic, and say they agree with it.
Yeah, and we've had one of the more conservative judges that passed away, Scalia, who, while he didn't believe in flag burning, he said that it was constitutional because it was your freedom of speech. And I think that
goes under freedom of speech.
What?
That goes under freedom of speech. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, so he voted for that being protected, and he did not agree with that. I do not agree with it. But I think that we need more people who think that just because you say something doesn't mean everyone is entitled to agree with it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that this is just a scary thing, especially when you have Google, who is in charge of a lot of the other phone companies, and then you have Apple, and then those are the two biggest tech giants. And that really leaves for very little as far as protection of conservative views.
Agreed.
Do you have anything to say to this, Noah?
Yeah, I definitely I follow you, but I think it's kind of overstepping their boundary depending on like what is hate speech, flagging different things, and the community should have their own thoughts before the tech giants come in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going on, saying that if you let people decide for themselves how they feel about the hate speech on platforms, 9 times out of 10, that hate speech isn't going to spread or gain followers. Because in reality, racism exists in America, hate exists in America, it exists in the world. But there's a very small group. Because in modern America in the 21st century, I think we can agree that generally for the equality of everybody, regardless of race, religion, color, creed, etc.
Yeah.
I
agree. Think that both parties believe in equality.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
And I think that with this, one other thing that will affect a lot of the younger people who don't even care about politics is what will this do for the music you listen to? Like
it's already affecting it.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna also have censored music that is going, because I mean, most rap music, which is beyond popular, there's some things in there that is definitely.
I got actually something really good to add too.
Yeah.
I was researching something for an English class, and a lot of, I think it was R. Kelly and XXX Tentacion, his music did get like kicked off. I don't think it got kicked off. But like
it got shadowed out on Spotify.
It got exactly.
Yes.
It got shadowed on Spotify because of like hate speech and what's going on with R. Kelly.
And his like they don't support criminals and stuff, but they got rid of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it's going, and like for that part, that's just like, listen, it's rap music. People like that kind of music. It's not necessarily hate speech because you don't see people actually going out and doing half the things that what R. Kelly or XXX Tentacion like said.
Mm-hmm. And also with that, you have most of this rap music that's popular is about like drugs. It's about sex. It's about all of these things that
all these awful things.
Yeah, and
but it's labeled.
Yeah, and that's protected under the freedom of speech, being able to make that music about that. And then now you're going to have all of that stuff being getting unless if I think it's profitable for Apple to keep it.
That's exactly the part where I was on the fence about getting rid of hate speech, because that affects music in general, and I don't know how that's not fair at all. Just to ban somebody for writing down a lyric and saying something that most people like think, yeah, I'm probably not gonna join a gang or do drugs or stuff like that.
Exactly, that's what I was getting at with, if you let the hate speech stay on the platform and don't ban it and shadow it, then most sensible people will not agree with it and just continue on with their lives.
Well, that again with the why I agree with it too. It's, think about it this way. It's I can't imagine if you just scroll, let's say you're just going on Twitter and you just see hateful racial comments about people like you or anyone like that. I mean, that's just gonna kind of ruin your day. To that extent, I get getting rid of hate speech. You know what I mean? If they did,
I understand that too. I understand that it's a very degrading thing for people of certain groups that are being targeted for this stuff to feel bad after it happens. But at the end of the day, there's nothing stopping you from expressing your own opinions in you not just being on the platform. In my opinion, if I saw something that was that inflammatory towards somebody who was like me, I would simply just turn off my phone. I know most people aren't like that, but that's what we got to start teaching in the world. Teaching to have thick skin and realize that these people saying these awful things aren't the majority, so you don't have to worry.
Yeah, and what I think
if you see something you don't like, you just got to look away.
Exactly. And with that as well,
what does that
people
do? What does that do? Hang on real quick. What does that do? You don't see somebody just don't look at it. It won't be there later. I mean, come on now.
Well, you have to take the feeling out of it. That's why. Because at the end of the day, all it is just some words on a screen. All you have to do is turn off your app or just continue scrolling and it's gone. That's the beauty of the internet at the same time. As ugly as it can be, that's the beauty. You don't have to look at that stuff.
Yeah, one other thing I want to add with this is people need to be reminded of what evils and what hate is out there in the world. You need to know that in order to believe in equality and stuff like that, you need to see that stuff isn't there, and that's how you can
You gotta see the people who don't believe in equality.
Well,
Yeah, see the racists.
no, but you need to realize that that is still out there and that is still a problem. And you need to, and again, as history, that if you don't learn from history, it's destined to repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if
right
you
there.
have like this image and stuff where you think that the world is all like fine and dandy, but you don't see how much hate is out there in the real world, you can't do anything about it. And it could overtake again.
I agree.
You know what? That's actually a really good point. I didn't think about that. That is a solid point there.
So it looks like Noah lost connection, but thank you for joining us. So now we have another topic that I want to cover, which is global warming.
Yes.
Matt's
Climate change,
Matt's
as they say.
excited about this topic.
I'm very excited.
Then you start us off. What do you want to say? Start off.
All right.
We'll go off
So
you.
my whole opinion on global warming and climate change is that, first of all, I do not believe in global warming.
Facts.
I'm a global warming denier, and let me say why. I don't believe in global warming, but I do believe in climate change, because to me, global warming is the notion that Earth is like rapidly heating and just completely melting because of how we're treating the ecosystem, which I think is completely false. But climate change is real and does have an effect. It may be a minor effect, and the intensity may be up for debate, but I think climate change is that the Earth is slowly getting hotter, but it's not like the intense, like, going up like 10 degrees every century.
Yeah, let me tell you something with climate change. Yes, it is happening, whether or not like a significant amount, that's fine. But there's no point in the history of Earth. Like, no point has the climate ever been consistent. Like, 2 million years from now, we would not have been able to, or like 200 million years, we would not have been able to survive in that atmosphere. Like, the Earth constantly changes as far as levels of CO2, as far as oxygen levels in the air, as far as temperatures. We had an ice age, like, what was it, like 10,000 years ago?
I think it was.
And
It was around the first time.
And let me tell you something, there was
humanity.
no Chinese pollution going on during that time. And when you think about it, Mother Nature just is not consistent. No matter what goes on, there's just no consistency. And what I want to talk about is the numbers for this. So, do you want to go?
Well, yeah, before you talk about the numbers, I'm gonna say my own opinion.
Yes.
So, I believe in climate change, and I also believe in global warming. And I will just back it up with the simple fact that, yes, though we can't tell how hot the Earth was 200 years ago, we can tell about how hot it was around 100 years ago. And it's very clear that the Earth is getting a little too hot, a little too quick. You can look at the Arctic, for example. You can look at the glaciers, how they're melting. You can just
Antarctica and Greenland have actually been getting more ice the past few years.
You can also see how it's affecting our outer layer of actual Earth itself, and more because of pollution, which kind of is affecting climate change and global warming. You can see how it's not like it's getting hotter 10 degrees a year. Like what was it, like 10 degrees a year or something said?
Well, like they're saying how like we will not be able to live on the Earth in like 20 years.
Yeah,
That's what they're
global
saying.
warming.
And they said that in the 70s too.
Okay, I don't quite believe that. That's a bit of a stretch for me.
Well,
but
for me, I think that the Earth, yes, it's definitely getting hotter, and I do believe
climate's changing ridiculous. Like I'm sorry, but it is changing.
it is changing. I'm not denying that, and I do agree that the Earth is getting hotter. I will acknowledge that the Earth is slowly, but it is getting hotter. But I also want to bring into question how much effect pollution actually has on that, because at the end of the day, the process of our sun and how much older it's getting. I'm not a science major or anything like that, but I know that the sun, the older it's getting even more hot. And I think that what we're doing with putting all these regulations in for the EPA and stuff, and just in the world in terms of regulations to stop pollution, it's only going to do so much in the grand scheme of things.
Well, yeah,
and
but
it's kind of unprofitable.
Well, if you can do anything, it will help. I mean, it is backed up by facts that, yes, pollution is kind of causing our ozone layer to not be as strong as it used to be. I mean, it's it is just kind of facts. You can't argue with facts.
Well, what I believe as far as that stuff goes is like I hate pollution, and I think that all of us can agree, or at least most of us, that pollution is not good by definition.
Yeah, Matt, what do you think?
But what I have issues with is that China is the number one largest polluting country on Earth, and America is nowhere near most countries. We have a lot less pollution than most countries, and I think that the laws regulating America would do nothing to stop the in general thing. And I think a lot of the other causes for pollution, for the climate, is not man-made, but a lot of it is due to the rainforest and stuff like that. And that has been the cause historically, like the past millions of years, as far as the cause of it. And one thing that I really dislike about this whole notion that's going on about how significant it is that all of these models on the UN countries, they all project it going up drastically very fast, whereas the actual numbers themselves are moving at a very slow pace. Like
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
I do acknowledge that Earth is getting hotter, but it's nowhere near the rate that we have to be so worried about it, and that it's like this epidemic.
Listen, we're going to be on Earth in the next 20 years. We don't got to worry about trying to go to Mars. That part I completely understand.
Well, I have teachers, not even science teachers, but just teachers themselves that are preaching about how we are not going to survive the next 20 years because of this, and how stupid Republicans are keeping us from surviving. But my thing
issue with it is that I don't mind encouraging recycling. I don't mind encouraging
that stuff's important
to lift up the carbon footprint. But my issue is when we try to regulate so much that cripples the economy, and that's kind of what happened in the 8 years of Obama that I noticed, at least from looking back at it, that there was a lot of people put out of work in terms of mine workers and coal workers and factory workers because they didn't want to leave a huge carbon footprint. And at the end of the day, if you look at the numbers in terms of how much hotter the Earth has been getting in the last 8 years,
it didn't stop.
Really do much.
Yeah, it didn't do anything.
It got more hot.
But watch what happens in 20 years. All of a sudden, we just die. Just watch. What
They said that about 2012. Remember?
Oh yeah.
They say in 2000, they've always.
But going back to this, I think that
smart.
I think that when you look at the graphs, it is closer to a flat line horizontally than it is a spiking diagonal line, as far as the amount of warming that's happening. And with the Obama years, it did not do anything to stop this. Whether it's natural or not, we can debate with that, but it just didn't really do anything. And I think that if we were serious about stopping this pollution and stuff like that, we would put more shackles on China, and we would try and do something with that. But even with that, it is scary just because they're a powerful country.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The problem is, if we try to put shackles on China, what will they do because of that? Will they stop?
That would be scary.
Because that's the thing. We rely so much on China for a lot of our economics.
Yeah,
in general. So what happens if we say, hey, listen, you got to stop this? They say no. What are we going to do about it? What are we really going to do?
As of right now,
I'm a firm believer, though. Me and Ben were talking about this yesterday off air, and I'm a firm believer of, yes, we do rely on China a lot, but China relies almost exclusively on us. So it would be just as bad for them to stop relations with us as it would be for us. And at the end of the day, we can recover because we import everything from all around the world. We import things from the Philippines, South America. We import everywhere. China almost exclusively is ran off American companies and all those factories going over to China. So what happens when we stop relations with them and all those places leave China? It would be insane for them to do something like that.
Yeah.
My worry is war.
I think if they decided right now to cut ties with us, we would be hurt. But I think
we would definitely be hurt because
because we just get so much stuff.
Look at your phone. Look at your computer. Look at half the things you own in your house.
Yeah, and
you will see a made in China.
Yeah, and I think though that if we start trying to get as much manufacturing as we can down the road in the near future in America, that would be, I think, better overall for us.
Well, again, I would love if we could get further down there. But think about it this way: like, do you guys support like American-made stuff more than Chinese-made? Well,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
I wholeheartedly do.
Well, that's the thing, and people are like, we should do that. You take a random person, and let's say, hypothetical, you throw them into Walmart. Let's say they're buying napkins. You can have the American-made napkins for like $3, or China-made for $2. What are you realistically gonna do? That part.
I understand that, but that's because of the state it's gotten to, and we start reversing that now and limit the imports on Chinese goods and start bringing factories back to America. That is going to flip.
Yeah, so while when that happens, the cost of labor is obviously cheaper in those countries. So goods would be cheaper.
You pay them a nickel an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, so goods would be cheaper.
I work for $12 an hour.
But at the same time, when you bring in that much more jobs to America, we'd have more money to spend on stuff. So it would kind of even out, in my opinion.
Well, the problem is it's going to take a while. Let's say right now we do this, it will take I predict like 10 to 15 years maybe before, if we start doing that now, because it's going to take a lot of time, because you have people who still don't work, you have people like me who are cheap and will buy the cheaper items, because you got to make this.
Well, I mean, you're taking advantage of the
you're
going to go for the cheaper.
You have to make, at the end of the day, especially for me, when you're in college, you have to make decisions that are financially better. I would love to support American-made stuff, and for the most part I will, but at the same time, it's just cheaper.
I know,
it's just cheaper.
That's why we do it.
The only reason why I do it is because it is cheaper and I can afford it better. I can buy more things that are made in China than are made in the U.S., even though the U.S. might be a bit better quality, and I understand that.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're already starting to see more companies coming into the U.S. that left. Like, when Trump came into office, we did see some companies that were beginning to make their products overseas. Mm-hmm. They came back, and I think that was really good.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes and circles back to the main topic that we were talking about with global warming and climate change. I think that a big part of them all leaving during the Obama administration was because Obama was regulating them to the point that the factories couldn't function.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I get that.
Yeah, and I think that with America, obviously, made in USA is something that I wear with pride, and I would take an American-made thing over anywhere else. And I do believe that we have a lot of craftsmanship here that is definitely superior than the mass-produced stuff in some other countries.
I don't disagree at all. I'm just saying.
I mean, it just gives me pride.
I get it. Gives me pride too. Like, listen, again, this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest countries in the world.
The greatest.
Yeah, okay, whatever. Anyways, it's great to see that, yes, we have some great craftsmen, we have some great welders, great, construction workers. At the end of the day, and this is kind of the problem with it all, money runs the world. Yeah. That's why these companies go to China. That's why, Americans, they want to support it. And I really wholeheartedly believe they really want to support American-made products. Yeah. They want to just support their pockets better. They want to make sure that they can look down at their wallet, see, I have enough money to buy things from China, which are cheaper, because sometimes people live on, a shoestring budget, and at that point, you gotta make smart money decisions, not smart.
Well, that's fine.
Not smart ethical decisions.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. I agree that if I'm in a store, honestly, if I'm in the store and I'm on a budget and I see the $5 box of Kleenex and the $2 one from China, I'm going to take the $2 one. But that's just because of where we are right now. But that's not really the conversation of choosing one or the other right now. It's a process that we can start to change from the government perspective of starting to, whether it's tariffing China, which I don't think will happen, but just starting to put reins on them so they have more regulation, so we can't just have American companies starting over them.
Well, yeah, but you kind of see that Trump is putting a lot more tariffs on certain countries, and
exactly.
At some point, and that's kind of one of those things where I like about that part of it. I like some of that stuff. But it's just that's a whole nother topic.
Well, I think that
we'll get off track.
I feel like if we say that, hey, if we say as Americans and say to American companies, the American government says to American companies that if you go over to China, you will have more taxes. We will regulate you more, and we will tariff your items coming back to America. More people are going to choose to stay here.
Exactly.
And then over time, that will start the process of phasing out Chinese items and having almost exclusively American-made items in America.
And one other solution I think should be done is that when you're talking about things that are cheaper and people not having the money for American-made stuff, I think that we need to focus also on what's making people impoverished, which is a lot of times like the colleges you go to, they are exponentially more costly than what their actual value is.
I was highly considering going to a trade school. I was really considering going to a trade school.
They make good money, and at this point, college is only going up, and it's going up to a point where it does not make much sense to go to most of these colleges.
Most kids,
they're coming out in tons of debt.
I did a lot of research on this, and this was, again, forgive me on the numbers. I'm not sure how, I forgot the numbers at the moment. I think it's 40-something% of college students will come out with over $100,000 in debt.
Yeah.
And basically, so in my macro class, we were talking about the poverty line and poverty itself. 44% of students, but they're going under the poverty line.
Yeah, and thing, imagine how much more people can spend on American-made goods if people did not have $100,000+.
Because in terms of when we're talking about college, I'm a firm believer that a lot of the majors in college, there's no necessity for that major in order for you to work in that.
Gender studies.
If you want to be a scientist and a chemist, you need to go to college. Of course, rightfully so, or a computer scientist.
If you want to be a doctor, you need the education.
Exactly. But in terms of things like people wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars on gender studies or a journalism class, when you could just
liberal arts. What are you gonna? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with that? I'm sorry. What are you gonna do?
Exactly, and you can.
I'm at school. I'm in school for business because I like business in general. It's so much better. I can come out with a job. I can come out of college and I can get a job because I'm taking business.
Or you can start your own business and make jobs.
You get the foundation. You get the foundation of how a business works and what you need to do for a business. Don't go to a $50,000 a year school to be a liberal arts major. Just don't do it. Do what I'm doing. Do what I'm doing.
Because you can freelance things like that. Those are things that you can do on your own outside without a college degree. And a lot of
the biggest thing for me
don't have that degree.
Do what I'm doing. Go to HCC. Go to a 2-year school. That's my first semester. The amount I had to pay, I think it was $800 my first semester. If I went to any other school, I want to
$15,000 just tuition.
Yeah.
And what I think that is when you're doing one other topic is political science. Why spend 4 years, get yourself in $100,000 in debt to basically just be indoctrinated when you can do your own research yourself
and become a freelance political commentator?
Yeah,
you can do things like that on your own without a college education. That's why I feel like unless you are going into a field that requires schooling, you should either be going to trade school or being a freelancer and trying to entrepreneurship your way into those fields.
And let's be real, even though some fields you need college, I do believe that you can be successful without any post-secondary education.
Oh, but it's a perfect example.
And America need people who don't have college. As bad as that sounds, you need lower-end workers for America to work and have jobs here.
Well, hang on. I understand what you're saying. I think you're using bad words for this. I think what you mean is, there's so many people who are going to a 4-year school. Wanting to do certain areas, and it's getting very saturated. It's a very saturated market. Go to a trade school. That's what you need more. Because listen, at the end of the day, you're gonna need someone to unclog your toilet. You're gonna need someone to fix your pipes. You're gonna need someone to fix your pipes, to make a sidewalk, to make cars. Go to a trade school. It's cheap. It's a 1-year thing. It's a 1-year thing. You can come out of the gate with a job like plumbing
or the military.
Or the military. Exactly. Do you want to hear? I didn't even know how much plumbers make. I looked this up. You can make
a lot.
You can make $90,000. I think a year. A year.
And the biggest thing is no debt. The biggest thing is the debt.
No debt at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, maybe a little bit to start off. Because you got to pay for the school. But other than that, literally after your first year, all right, I'm done.
Exactly. And I think an example of that is my dad. My dad joined the service out of high school. After his years in the service, he went to trade school to become an electrician. Over time, he's made a very good living for himself, and he did without any college degree.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the point is that, like you said, it's become such a saturated field. Like, college has like hundreds of majors now, where 40 years ago, college had like 10 majors that you could choose from.
But at the same time, I like how there's more majors, because for me, like with sports management, it's not like super new, it's newer. And for me, that's great, because I found something that I really like to do, and that requires business. I love sports and I like business. And at the same time, I'm trying to intern right now. That's a very important part also, I should mention. If whatever you want to do, experience is everything. If you can get your foot even a little bit in the door, it will help you tremendously for whatever you want to do.
And I think that while college is something that you want to do, and I think it is a great thing to have a diversity of things to learn, but you need to understand, America, that you just need to be smart with what you choose, and you need to be smart with where you place your money, because it could haunt you for the rest of your life.
Agreed.
I love how we were originally talking about climate change, yet we somehow got to what you should do when you actually get to college. I find that just hilarious.
Both important issues.
I mean, yeah, but we got a little sidetracked, I'm not going to lie.
So I'm thinking for a next topic, we should talk about the wage gap, the gender wage gap. So what are your opinions on this, Matt?
All right. My opinion is that, yes, there is a gender wage gap, but I don't think that it's an issue. And the reason I say I don't think it's an issue, because I believe that there's a lot more that goes into it than just gender inequality.
There definitely is.
When you look at most of these studies that say, yes, there is on average that men earn 76 cents to every man's dollar, there's a reason for that. And it's because that a bunch of things. Number one, on average, women in college tend to choose lower paying majors.
Gender studies.
Yep. Number two, the big one is that on average, men work more overtime, they work longer hours, and they also have a higher risk of dying on the work site, which is called for a higher pay. And on average, that's because men tend to work in construction fields, in trade fields, where women tend to work behind the desk. And I'm not stereotyping or anything. This is just statistics.
Yeah, stereotypical. And another thing with that is, so when you say that women make like 76 or 78 cents for every dollar a man makes, you think they say that's for a full-time job, but what they don't say is how long the full-time job is for that same job. Like, women, they tend to work less than men. As you said, they work less hours. So when a man is working like 40 hours compared to a woman working 35 on average, should women make the same amount as a 40-hour working guy if they're working 5 hours less?
And another thing, Ben, that they also don't take into account is maternity leave.
Yeah,
women only go on maternity leave. Men just can't because, we don't have kids.
Yeah, and we're supporting the family while the woman has the kid.
Exactly, and women will take months on end off because of maternity leave, and that's okay, like they have to.
Yeah.
But that's another reason. Like, there's a lot of things that they don't take into account that are outside factors as to why. So I'm not denying that they make 76 to every man's dollar, but there's reasons for it.
Yeah, and I can tell you that that this society is really currently pressuring men, specifically white men, into feeling like they are being so much superior and should be taken down compared to all other either gender or race or just anything. Like when you're talking about, say, the gender wage gap and how even though you might be working construction and you are risking your life every day, that you should feel bad for making that money because someone else who happens to be a different gender chooses not to do that or is in a less dangerous form of that job. And
Agreed.
And you have you have men who just tend to choose the more and can do the more physical labor, and that isn't a rip on women. Men just naturally have more testosterone. They tend to have larger muscles because that's just biology. But and also when you're working more, you're gonna get more bonuses because you're working more.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be working overtime if you weren't going to get paid more, and that's what they also don't take into account. So there's a lot of reasons. So yes, I do believe that there is a gender wage gap, but I don't think it's a problem because I think that if women want to be paid equally to men, they're going to have to work the same jobs, same hours.
And it requires sacrifices. If you want to have that family, you might not be able to if you want to work for that time. Or maybe the roles would have to switch because traditionally when men would leave when men would leave the work whereas a woman would raise the family, maybe the man would have to take care of the kids at home. But at that point, then it would be men making 76 cents for every woman's dollar, and that wouldn't be equality.
Equilibrium. You'll never get an equilibrium. That's just the fact of the matter, because everybody's human, everybody's an individual, and everybody does different things and has to make certain sacrifices in certain situations.
Mm-hmm. And you can work with your lifestyle the best that you can, but you have to think about what's really important. If you want to have a family, if you want to have kids, that's going to require some sacrifice on both ends.
Agreed.
But if you think it's worth it and that is what you envision yourself doing, I think you should. But also, I think that you should have a family when you're ready to, and you shouldn't just jump into things like that, and because you don't...
It's a big decision.
Yeah, it is a big decision, and I personally think that you should be financially stable before you make that decision, because there's a lot of impoverished families that require child support that bring in tons of money from the government, which leaves them just stuck in that position of poverty because they chose to make that decision prematurely.
Agreed.
So that's it for the gender wage gap for right now. I feel like that topic's going to come up in some future episodes, so stay tuned. But for right now, I have a very interesting topic that we've been asked a lot, and we do cover a good bit, but I want to give a more in-depth an amount of time for communism versus socialism versus capitalism.
Yep.
Because we rip on socialism. And we rip on communism.
Praise Jesus.
Because, personally, I believe in the free market, and I believe in more of a capitalist system. But I want to have a talk right now about these three forms of government and these three forms of an economic system. Because as far as government goes, a communist country, the government itself is a totalitarian government. Like, communism is really an economic standpoint.
Dictatorship.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of also wanted to talk about communism a little bit, and this is my own opinion. I feel it's important that this is all our own opinion.
Yeah.
Yep.
On paper, communism does not sound bad. In practice, it is terrible. Now, hang on. I'm actually gonna pull up what communism actually stands for. Communism is a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid accordingly to their abilities and needs.
I personally don't like it, but...
Well, again, you don't have to like it.
Mm-hmm.
What is entirely wrong with having that everyone works and gets the same? There's no rich, there's no super poor. It's...
Well,
again, on paper, it's great. On paper, it doesn't sound bad at all. In practice, it's terrible.
Yes, I agree with you totally, and that's the big piece of it. And I think the reason that in practice it's terrible is because, once again, like I was talking about with the gender wage gap, that everybody is individuals. Everybody's going to have their own aspirations, their own needs. And at the end of the day, as nice as it sounds, if everybody wanted to just chip in a little bit, not everybody's going to want to. Everybody's selfish. Most people are selfish. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of people are selfish, and a lot of people are only going to be looking out for their family and their close friends, which is, in my opinion, pretty reasonable. And I think that's the big reason that why also on a small scale, when you see things like small-scale socialist and communist ideas being incorporated into American life, like health insurance and Social Security, those things work fine because they're on a small scale, so nobody has any issue in contributing to them. But when it's a full-on government in which everything's publicly owned and everybody is equal, that everybody doesn't have like the same desire to do that, especially in a country of 300 million people.
Yeah.
Well, what I believe...
I'm just looking at you, Ben, and I can tell that you don't like communism, so I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Okay, so what I want to say is that even on paper, I'm not a fan, because I personally don't believe in that the government knows what's best for me, and and the key words is publicly owned. That means that you don't have ownership over anything, and when the government controls everything you have, they can just as easily take that away from you.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I agree with you on the government aspect, but in the aspect of communism that also kind of is there in socialism, in the sense of everybody sharing what is made. Well, on a small scale, that's not bad.
Well, that's what I don't even believe in that.
That's what I keep saying. On paper, it does not sound bad at all, except for you. Except for you, Ben. That does sound bad. I'm not like attacking you. I'm just saying that makes sense.
Well, let me just say,
you have people like Stalin, which you don't want to be. You don't want to be him. You don't.
Well, let me just say that when you have everyone when everyone is sharing their stuff, I just don't. I believe firmly in individualism, which is probably why I don't consent to communism. Even just the written definition of it.
The on paper part of it.
I personally think that like if I was going to be a doctor or something and I was dedicating my life to that, I shouldn't make the same amount of money as someone who works in a fast food joint because I put my ass to work. I get the education that I want and that is required. I get those grades and then I'm just stuck supporting the people who believe in not doing anything because they're getting just as much of a benefit from. Because when you look, so with communism, you have people who benefit and you have people who don't, because you want everything to meet in the middle, which would be that equilibrium, that line where everything is equal. But with that, you have the people who don't do anything and benefit, but you have the people who I believe, who I sympathize with more, who are the people that exceed what people tell them to, the people that accomplish their dreams, the people that make the inventions that we have happen, and they are brought down to match this point that is just fixed. It is fixed.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Ben, and that's the aspect of communism that I do not like.
Exactly.
That, in my opinion, those people, those innovators, like the founding fathers, or anybody who's made the Ford.
It wouldn't exist.
Yeah, not just that, but the people who made that stuff are deserving of more money and more recognition because they've done more than most people will do in their entire lives, and I think they deserve to be compensated entirely equal to what that is.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not supporting communism.
I know.
I'm not. Mm-hmm. I like capitalism. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to because the problem is because then this was just turn into oh yeah, communism's terrible. Communism's terrible. On paper, it's not. Well, yes. Again, Ben, in practice, it's awful. But on paper, it doesn't sound that bad. Honestly, I understand as you who does believe in the market, it sounds terrible either way.
In the simplest definition that I can come up with for communism, it is that the government runs the market. So you don't have private ownership. The government owns stuff. That would be the simplest definition of communism that you'd have.
Full-blown communism. Yeah.
And then what you have next would be socialism, which is basically
it's very similar.
Yeah, it's communism light. So it is the government owns the government runs the economy, but there is some amount of private enterprise in there. So there is.
I still don't like.
I don't either.
I feel like that, in my opinion, if the government has that much control over the market, then in reality, does anybody really have any private ownership? Because at the end of the day, yeah, you might technically be in name owner of said company, but your company is going to be regulated to the government's liking. So in reality, who really has the control?
Oh yeah, no, you don't. You still don't have control either way. It's just it's kind of more of the it's more of the sharing aspect of it.
Yeah, and what I think is that again, when you have something like socialism or communism, there is no incentive for competition. There's no incentive for innovation because there's no competition. Because competition is what creates all of these luxuries we have. The people who want to be at the top. The people that strive to invent and innovate for the market, for the people that can buy that stuff, buy what they want, buy what helps them. That is what leads to our innovations. But when you have a government that controls the economy, that controls that stuff, why would you want to spend all of that time to make something that people can't even have and that the government doesn't let you?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. And another thing about socialism and communism that I do not like is that at the end of the day, all that government regulation and government control is going to mean that everything that you have in your house is going to be government regulated, like products and services, all that stuff is going to be regulated. The
everyone will have the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the government's liking is going to be the cheapest one to make. It doesn't matter about quality. So there's no quality anything in a socialist or communist country.
That's why almost all of their stuff, like their cars are like 30, 40 years older than the cars that are in a capitalist country.
It's the cheapest.
Yeah, it's the cheapest and it's what they have and there's no innovation. So it's literally like a time portal into the past when you go into those countries. You just see relics because they just can't innovate. And then you have the other aspect where with communism and socialism where you have where they preach of one class that just doesn't exist because the government is its own class and they are in charge of you and they control everything. So really it's just a matter of whether or not you're a business that would be up top in a pure capitalist society, or you have the government that is at the top in a communist society.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that the people who run those communist dictatorships, they are not in poverty. They're not lacking in food like everyone else.
They're living lavishly.
Yeah. Because there is a class, and that is the ruling class.
And let me be clear. I do support capitalism. I don't support communism and socialism. But I support the type of capitalism we have right now, where we have limited government regulation. Because I'm not a believer of libertarianism in the sense that no government anything, because I think it's important for the government to have things like monopoly blockers and stuff in the market. But I think that America is the best system we have, and I think to change anything majorly would be very hard.
The laissez-faire approach, and that it's
exactly. I love that
it's a no. The laissez-faire is no.
It's hands off.
Yeah, well, you like it. Well, yeah, of course you like
it.
But
so
to
what?
A normal person. But listen, it's exactly what he said. You have a problem with monopolies, and what monopolies can cause is kind of something what communism is. That it regulates. Like if you have like a juggernaut. Like Disney, it could get very close to becoming a monopoly. They can.
Well, the big thing with monopolies is that they can wind up becoming a government in and of itself. It's just one giant government that controls everything as a business rather than as a government itself.
But that's
and then it's going to be the same problem that you're going to have one monopoly company that controls the entire market, and everything you get is going to have no innovation. It's going to have poor quality. It's going to be cheaply made. It's going to be the same thing. So that's why I feel like America has the perfect balance of some socialist aspects in smaller grades and overall having a free market.
Well, I personally believe that there should be a little less involvement as far as the government goes in the economy. But I think that I believe in the laissez-faire approach, which is hands off. But that still means limited it means limited government.
No,
you limit it down as
laissez-faire, hands off, don't touch it. It's all to the people.
Yeah, but
there is no government whatsoever. Yeah. That's what
the laissez-faire founding fathers, they believed in a smaller government. They didn't believe in no government. They didn't believe in anarchy. They believed in having
fact check you.
Okay, look up laissez-faire founding fathers. But they still believed in having a government, but they just had it. They needed it to have as little of an impact as they can, and I believe in.
I agree with that totally too, because I don't, like I said, I think where we are in America is very good. We have the perfect system, or not perfect. I apologize.
Yeah,
we have the best
we have a good system.
Mm-hmm. We have a good system, and for us to make any major changes to shift either to full blown socialism or shift to full blown capitalism,
would be no. We're not going to do that. Listen,
and
that will never happen. First of all,
so
that's
for the definition of laissez-faire. So it is a policy or attitude of letting things take their own course without interfering, and I believe in that for the most part in the economy. Like I believe that it should run itself, and I do.
The case, then there's no government regulation.
There's no interfering.
Well, there's
none.
Yeah, I believe in limited government regulation.
But that's not no interfering.
Well, for the most part,
no. It says no. It says none. It says none. Ben.
Yeah, none. That meant so we have a modified laissez-faire approach, But
We
we
do.
don't have a full-blown laissez-faire approach, because if we had a
But
full-blown,
we can't.
then there would be
You
no
can't.
government
I feel like
involvement.
it's hard to go full blown in any direction, whatever you choose.
It is full-blown. Anything is bad. You need to have a cocktail.
That's why
of
it's
these
great. That's why it's
economic
great
systems.
when you can integrate things. When you can have a capitalist that's also laissez-faire, but that also has some forms of socialism.
Yeah,
I agree, and that's where I am, and I think that, yes, we should lean to majority capitalist views in our economy, but I think there should be some aspects where the government has regulation.
Well, I believe that for the most part, the government should have their hands off, but I believe that there should be a limited amount of regulations, like just to keep something like a large monopoly from coming about and becoming its own government. But for the most part, I do believe in laissez-faire. There's a few exceptions to it, which is obviously that example, but for the most part,
Yes.
for the most part, I believe in the free market, and I believe that
regulations, but laissez-faire.
what I love about it is that with a capitalist system, it is a merit-based system. So how hard you work is reflected on that, and a lot of people say that, then why are hardworking people in poverty? Because it is also about the drive you have. Because it is survival of the fittest, which is a natural thing. So if you don't have the drive, just because you work hard doesn't mean you're working efficiently at reaching your goals.
Yeah, like, for just kind of as an example, a personal example, like at my job specifically, like right now, listen, I know this is gonna sound very cocky, but I know I'm like the best. I'm the best worker they have there, but I'll get like the bad shifts. I'll get a Sunday, for example, when there's not a lot of business. But another guy gets the better shifts than me. And like kind of starting off now, I understand survival of the fittest, but at the same time, sometimes that doesn't help. It just sometimes doesn't.
Yeah,
because I know I'm the
part of life, though. That's just kind of like
life isn't fair.
About that.
Life sucks. Deal with it.
And if it knocks you down because you're not fit enough, get yourself back up and become that.
I get up again.
Become that alpha that you are. Because I believe strongly that you should be judged in this world based on your actions and not based on your words, and that is something we don't hold a lot of politicians to, which we should.
Everyone can talk.
Yeah.
Some people can't work.
Well,
yes. And these are all things, though, that in general why I support free market for the most part. And that's also part of the reason that self-proclaimed socialists in American politics like Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez kind of worry me sometimes, because they ultimately self-proclaiming a socialist, meaning that they want to become a socialist country.
That was the one problem. And that's kind of like the one thing that, like, I feel that a lot of people kind of, if Bernie wasn't so kind of socialist forward, I believe he would have beaten Hillary. And
he beat Hillary, but the thing was that the Democrats, they voted for Hillary to be their nominee, even though Sanders won. I'm pretty sure he won the popular vote.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, but still,
by a good bit.
I think
too.
Again, with the problem. Well, this is, again, kind of off topic, but back to the 2016 election. I feel like the one reason, and this kind of goes back to everything we were talking about, the one reason Hillary lost was not rationally thought people. It was people who made rushed, quick decisions on little information they had, and that's why I think she lost, personally. But that's just me. And again, it's a bit off topic. But
she had a lot going against her, too. Like, she was probably one of the least popular candidates that they could have had.
I was going to say, she was a really bad candidate overall.
She had scandals. Her husband had scandals. She's part of that. And she looked weak, too. Like, even just at a physical standpoint, like, she got really sickly.
Her body did kind of cave in. I'll be the first to admit it. I heard the stories like Hillary's sick, cancels, like, going...
What about her passing out at the 9/11 memorial right before the election?
That happened?
Yeah. Yes, she passed out.
I completely forgot about that one.
But anyways, going back, so to give more of a definition for capitalism is where the private citizens run the market, where the market is purely private enterprise. And
well, there's also problems with that too, because then you
can't, there's problems with full.
There's problems.
Full blown either one is not
full blown. Anything can be very bad, because that, especially capitalism, because that equates to monopolies.
So
monopolies aren't good. They just aren't.
Yeah, to recap what I believe hands off for most of the economy, I think that there's a few spots where you need government regulation, but other than that, just hands off. Just
Yes,
let the
for
market
me-
run itself.
Yeah, for me, the sweet spot is a mixture of capitalism and socialism, with it being like probably like 90 or 95% capitalism and like 10 or 5% socialism, where you have that limited regulation.
I can kind of agree. Maybe I would change the numbers a little bit, but not like drastically. Mostly
What would
capitalism.
you have the numbers be?
I would probably do like 75-25
Okay.
because I feel like that's kind of where we are a little bit.
I think we're probably I'd say we're probably around there, but I'd like.
I'd say we have
maybe
more
more like-
socialism.
Maybe
honestly,
maybe
in
more
our
like
country.
80-20. But
In our country, I think that as of right now, we're having a little too much government interference with daily life. Like for some areas that I just think that they shouldn't be.
yeah, and I agree.
'Cause
that's
that's why-
I kind of gave it 25.
Yeah, and again, that's why I believe with mostly everything in laissez-faire. And again, there's a few things where I believe that the government should step in, but those are very few and far between.
Agreed.
So that was that. But we have something really crazy for you, going on to the more local level. So in my school, we have an environmental science AP class, and apparently there's something called
one-
ecofeminism that is being talked about.
This one is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's being taught.
Matt, can you tell us what it is?
Yes. So this is the definition of ecofeminism according to the sources given to us by Longmeadow High School in Massachusetts. The definition of ecofeminism is the view that there are important theoretical, historical, and empirical connections between how society treats women and how it treats the environment.
So I don't entirely understand what they're saying.
Where do you start with this?
Do any of you actually know what they're actually trying to like get?
I
I think
think
what
it's-
they're trying to insinuate is that we treat the environment bad just like we treat women badly in society.
I thought it was people who treat the environment bad also treat women poorly, and I
Well, that too. That is just the wording, but that's basically essentially the same thing. And that's what you're getting at.
but
This is something that I cannot believe is being taught in a science class,
This
which is
doesn't
a
make
purely
sense.
fact-based.
Doesn't
makes sense, man. I mean, what is the
How is this relevant to the students' learning?
what is
It's
this
not
called?
just that, but it's a theory. Like it's a view. Like it's not.
Do you
it's not
what are the actual? It's a theory. I was gonna say like, do you guys have facts about this? Like, did you guys
Well, they're
take?
teaching this view to kids. Like they're not teaching.
It's
the
indoctrination.
opposite of that. Yeah, it's total indoctrination. And it's like they're not teaching any other view. It's like this. I looked through the entire lesson, like this entire unit, the AP Environmental Science section that they're running right now. This is the only view that they're taught is ecofeminism, which is
But I don't-
insane to me. It's mind blowing.
I don't even fully get.
This
Who
is
came up with this? Who did this?
I don't know.
I don't-
Who's responsible? Is this
We're-
Alex
we're gonna keep-
Jones?
We're gonna keep teachers out of their names out of this for ethical reasons.
Well,
But-
I was told, Ben, that the teacher that was teaching it already stated, one of the teachers that was teaching this stated before the fact that he didn't agree with it, but he had no choice but to teach it.
So what is wrong with this is that you have not only these views that are going about that don't make sense. There's no correlation.
you
There's
have-
no facts.
You have a
going
view
towards this.
that is ridiculous, but you also have a view that is one-sided. You have a one-sided, ridiculous view
in a science class.
in a class that's an AP science class, nonetheless. It's also environment. I mean, it makes sense that climate. I was gonna say like, it doesn't make sense for environmental class, but they're talking about climate change, but it doesn't make sense. Period.
Is this trying? I feel like this is trying to rip on conservatives by trying to indirectly state that conservatives, since they don't believe in the significance of climate change at this time, that they are also people who hate women.
That's what I
Of
was.
course, and
That's what I was thinking. That's the whole part. I thought that are they trying to say that people who are sexist and hate women that also hate the environment? Is it like when I first read this, I thought that are they saying that climate change is only affecting feminists?
I feel like they're indirectly trying to target Trump because Trump doesn't believe in the climate change stuff, and because of his accusations that have happened.
I think it's just another way of them to add in a very taboo topic that they have strong opinions on into something that has nothing to do with it. They're saying, hey, yeah, we think that they treat the environment bad, And hey, that reminds me of something. We treat women terribly.
and
That's what they're trying to insinuate.
the guy who was writing this was like, yeah, these Republicans hate the environment, they also hate women. Done. I don't
Next thing you know,
this is the whole thing with rational thinking. It's not going on right here.
This is another reason why I cannot stress enough the importance of individual
Research.
thought and research, logic, and reason for everything you're taught in school or taught anywhere.
Don't take anything at face value.
Yeah,
take nothing at
take it with a grain of salt.
Take nothing at face value, because to be face value will mostly have opinion at its core. Face value will have opinion, and that
it always does.
And opinion matters, not when you got to teach somebody.
Yeah, when you're teaching, it should be neutral as possible.
You have to give them the facts on both sides, and you make them make a decision.
But this shouldn't even be a side.
Oh no, this shouldn't be a thing in general. But this is just
this is plain propaganda.
And the thing that this was regulate that they made this being taught.
That's what makes it ridiculous. This school,
like, let's teach
they didn't even approve it. They forced they force a teacher in the school who teaches even though he doesn't personally believe in it.
Well, for that part, I feel like
this is bigger than just a crazy teacher.
But when sometimes that's the other thing. It's bigger than a crazy teacher. But sometimes when you force somebody to do it, and sometimes people have their own opinion, of course. So sometimes I took a government class. My teacher taught us the facts, and this teacher said talked about I think the teacher was mostly liberal, but they talked about conservatism and why it's good sometimes, and that is really kind of crucial. That you have your own opinion why you don't like it, but they taught it and they taught you the facts and they told you about what's good about it, they told you what's bad about it, and the same thing for the side that they believed in. It's important that you gotta.
That is valuable.
I know there's a problem. I know there's some problems with liberals. I understand that, and I also know that there's good with them, and I know there's bad with Republicans, and yet good with them at the same time. I understand that.
I don't think I've ever had a unbiased history teacher, teacher that did not just shove their ideals down our throats. And
I had a couple.
I've not had any that said anything positive about conservatism, and I've not had them teach anything that was against liberalism. I really just think that you can't have opinions being taught as fact, and even though sometimes you might want to hear some opinions, and they should be from both sides, this does not belong in a science class.
Agreed.
Since where was a scientific method conducted to come up with this theory?
No.
Where was the hypothesis? The hypothesis is ecofeminism, but where is anything backing it?
It's a theory.
Where's the research done that they're citing?
Most theories will have facts, and they'll pull up information. I would love to see their research.
Oh, I would pay to see what actually was conducted to come up with this.
Yeah, I know.
Because this is a science class, and this is heartbreaking that something like this is being taught as fact.
You're right.
Okay.
Anyways, that was a wrap for those sections. Thank you, Dom, for coming. We really appreciate you coming out here and showing us other views that people in this country have.
Anytime, boys. Anytime.
Now it is time for our weekly shout-outs. So all of the people that responded, so we've got Tyler8801, BV21Best, The.Supreme.Conservative, Jake Fromst8, Israel_Harrell, Scott_Witunsky22, Mr. Obchase, Michelle M. Leary, Charlotteville _architecture, Citizen Truth _ Let's Debate It, Hans _Mice4, The Canadian Trump Supporter, and Magazine Reaction Pro. Thank you so much for liking our shout out picture, and remember, you just have to like the post and you get shouted out. It takes nothing to do. All you have to do is follow our Instagram, free_will_podcasts. Just like the post, you get shouted out. Simple as that.
Yep.
So, Matt, have any good books you've been reading lately?
Yep, that's time for our books I'm reading section. So, as always, I'm going to be discussing the books I'm reading, keeping you guys up with it. And The first one I'm going to cover is The Obama Diaries by Laura Ingraham. The past 2 episodes I've talked a little bit about it, and I have officially finished that book. And I said I liked it. It started out kind of weak, in my opinion, but at the end, she really covered a lot of good stuff about the Obama administration, the tactics they used, and I think overall it was a really good correlation of what the Democrats did right to get Obama in office and what the Republicans need to do better. And it was an older book. It was written in about 2010 or 09, I believe. So it was a little older, and it's kind of cool that you can go back and read a book like that and see the correlations of stuff that actually ended up happening that they called. So, yeah, I definitely recommend that book. That was a really good book. The second book I'm reading as well is The Phenomenon by Rick Ankiel. It's his biography. And I believe I was on chapter 6 or 7. Actually, I was on chapter 8 last episode. And this episode, I have reached chapter 12. And it's a good book. Like I said, he went through a lot of hard stuff to become a baseball player, and I respect him a lot more now for it. But I've gotten to the part now where he's actually in the pros, and he's covered like his first 2 actual pro seasons, not minor leagues. And it's very interesting. And I'm someone who loves baseball very much. I love learning about baseball and history. So it's been very enjoyable. I'll get back to you guys, though, when I do finish it, and I'll keep updating everybody. All right, so that's all my books I'm reading right now.
Yeah, so thank you all for tuning in to the Free Will Podcast. Again, I'm Ben.
And I'm Matt, and we have the Free Will Podcast.